Hello everyone, this is Teacher Alan representing Mto Online. I'm here to take you through some bit of biology. Um, I'm simply here to simplify a certain item from element of construct 1 of biology. This element of construct 1 sets items of section B, part 1. And they set items 4 and 5. The question we are going to go through, like we agreed that this holiday, we are going for question, answer in preparation for mocks. The item goes, during the recent press conference, the Minister for Health stated that in every population of organisms, 1.37% of the total number of organisms are affected by symptoms of infections caused by group R of organisms. The organisms are very tiny that cannot be seen by a light microscope, using the light microscope. So one of the descriptions given that the organisms are very tiny. The minister added that the organisms either contain RNA or DNA, but not both, and cannot reproduce when outside a living cell. They crossed the quotes and says the teacher. So all the above statement was a statement from the teacher. They added and said that on posing the tasks to his students, Naome was not able to respond to any. They cannot, and she has approached you for help. The tasks are as follows. As a biology student, help Naome to identify group R of the organisms. Part B, you're saying that state any specific symptoms of any two identified infections in Roman 1, humans, and Roman 2, plants. Part C, they are telling us to describe any ways the infections mentioned above in humans may spread in a community. Part D, they're telling us to describe the general medical method that can be used to control the spread of such infections. And lastly, explain the significance of prevention of such infections in a community. So it is an item that was said from actually senior 1 work. The teacher didn't want to disclose the identity of these organisms that belong to this group. However, he gave you some of the characteristics of these organisms as they being very tiny that cannot be seen by a light microscope. He also talked of the organisms containing a DNA or RNA, but not both. And He also said that these organisms cannot reproduce outside a living tissue. All of these ones are to give you a clue about the category of these organisms. Let me hope we are moving. So part A, they are telling us to give the identity of this group of these organisms. And basing on the descriptions given about group R of organisms, those are characteristics of viruses. So the identity is viruses. R or group R is comprising of viruses. Because they are the viruses that cannot reproduce when outside a living tissue. The viruses whose cytoplasm may either contain RNA or DNA, but not both. We know the different characteristics of these viruses. They are very tiny, smaller than even the bacteria, that they cannot even be seen by a light microscope. So the identity of these organisms were viruses. They just want us to identify. Part B, they told us that we state any specific symptoms of any two infections caused by such organisms. Dear friends, we all know the different viral infections in humans. They are very big. That we even remember those that have just caused um, a recent international lockdown. You can't forget about it. And that infection was COVID-19. We remember it is caused by a coronavirus. So in this question, they didn't ask for the virus that caused which infection, but it's better you know. We remember the Ebola in Kasese. We hear of the measles, the red pox. We hear of very many infections. We cannot forget. So they told us to mention any two viral infections. So for me, I've decided to go with these two. We have the HIV that is caused by, no, the AIDS that is caused by the HIV. There are very many viral infections, to mention but a few. They are telling us to give the specific symptoms of these infections. We may start with those of COVID-19. We remember them. They used to sing them. They talked of dry cough, the dry cough. We can't forget red eyes, the symptoms, high fever, symptoms of COVID-19, the symptoms we cannot forget, difficult in breathing. Remember, thousands of people in the world were just supported in breathing. They were put on oxygen to support their breathing. We cannot forget the symptoms. When we talk about Ebola, we remember Ebola very well. Remember the symptoms of Ebola. red, the red eyes. Someone with Ebola could develop red eyes. We remember passing out of blood from every opening of the body, the specific ones. We remember bloody diarrhea. We cannot forget about that. The specific symptoms of these viral infections in humans. Do you have any specific infection for AIDS? Remember of polio, symptoms of polio, measles, all those infections that are caused by viruses in humans. You can mention any in your comment section. You state a viral infection and some of the symptoms. And they are talking of the infections in the plants. We remember in our senior one, we talked of the cassava mosaic. We remember some of these symptoms of cassava mosaic. We mentioned, the teacher has mentioned of yellowing, and wrinkled leaves. We remember that as a symptom of cassava mosaic. We remember that these plants or the plants with cassava mosaic have a retarded growth, very poor honor yield. We remember that, and we all know that plants or cassava plants with this mosaic, if they put on tubers, they are very tiny and small, or they don't put on tubers at all. We cannot forget that even the tubers put on by these cassava plants, they easily rot. They cannot be eaten. Because the leaves that would form food to be stored in the tubers are wrinkled, yellow in color. They cannot carry out photosynthesis to make the other food that is stored in the tubers. The growth is retarded because the food that would have supported this growth is not made because the leaves are wrinkled and yellow in color. No photosynthesis is taking place. So you can talk of the tomato wilt. We know that. It is a viral infection. And actually, we remember this, and we know that some of the symptoms of the tomato wilt is shedding of leaves prematurely. We shall find that such tomato plants with that, the leaves wilt and dry easily. Even when it is not part of the plant, the leaves are usually wrinkled and with very weak stems that break easily. There are very many um, viral infections caused by viral infections in plants. We can mention of the tomato mosaic, the tobacco mosaic, um, the potato mosaic X. We cannot forget about that, and there are very many others we cannot mention now. These are some of the infections in plants and some of the infections in the humans caused by group R of the organisms. So remember we said we always give a group on which you will build on. So part C, they are saying that describe any ways the infections mentioned above in humans may spread in a population. Mention any ways. These infections we mentioned, the COVID-19 and Ebola, so we shall be specific. How can Ebola spread in a population? How can COVID-19 spread in a population? So, not to be too wordy, we all know that for Ebola, they are telling us to describe. So, they are asking about the transmission, how these infections are transmitted from one individual to the other. So, for Ebola, can be transmitted when one touches sealed clothing of an infected person. That is one. The moment you touch any sealed clothing of an infected person, you are actually prone to getting it. Still, these ones, when you get into contact with any fluid from an infected person, you can still contract it. Um, Direct, actually, this is still contact, so you may not mention it. Uh-huh. When you use sharp objects used by an infected person, you can still contract the infection. So there are several ways Ebola can spread, can move or spread from one person to the other. When you are in contact, when one is in contact with any um, infected surfaces, such as the door, and touch his or her soft tissues, this person can still contract the Ebola infection. So there are different ways uh, these infections can spread from one individual to the other in a community. Still, for COVID-19, when one gets close, just getting close to an infected person, you can contract COVID-19 because it is an airborne infection. So, in short, different infections have different ways they are spread within a community. For example, if the infection is AIDS, some of these ways of transmission may not apply to AIDS because AIDS is not an airborne infection. It is only transmitted through fluids and specifically blood. When you get into contact with blood, direct contact of your blood with the blood of an infected person, that's when you contract this AIDS. Let me think I'm communicating. So, in short, those are some of the ways some of these infections may spread in a community. Measles, how does measles spread? When you get into contact with the clothes of an infected person, you may contract it. When you like, um, for measles, specifically getting into touch with an infected person is the only way you can contract it. And the next question is, describe a general medical method that can be used to control the spread of such infections. So, the general method for controlling spread of viral infections. We all know this method, and it is simply vaccination. The spread of these infections, the medical method, actually not general, but the question is the medical method for controlling the spread. That is vaccination. And the question is clear that we describe it. A description, they want us to give details about vaccination. So vaccination involves introduction of partially killed or weakened virus into a person's body. either through injection or by oral administration. But what the virus administered should either be weakened or partially what? Killed. This virus, the partially killed virus induces symptoms that would have been brought by the other viral infection, but this time mild symptoms, cause they are weakened just to cause some mild symptoms. These symptoms will trigger a long-lasting immunity against such a virus, such an individual. That in case of emergence of such a virus, the body has a clue on how to fight it. So, viruses, partially killed viruses, are introduced into a person's body by either injection or oral administration. So the virus cause mild symptoms which trigger a long-lasting immunity against such symptoms. This is how, what are the key points in this? Is the general method, which is vaccination. Secondly, is the virus introduced should be partially killed or weakened. This weakened virus we should also indicate how it gets into the body, either by injection or by oral administration through the mouth. We should also talk about what it does when it gets to the body. Is triggering or causing mild symptoms. And what do the symptoms do? The impact is to cause or trigger a long-lasting immunity against such symptoms. This is the general medical method for controlling the spread of such viral infections. That general method is vaccination. Almost all, apart from AIDS, almost all viral infections can be controlled or stopped to spread in the community by vaccination. Why do we vaccinate? Is one, we cannot actually treat or cure these infections. The only thing we can do is to avoid. So this time they are asking about the medical method. In another question, you'll find they will be asking about the behavioral methods of controlling the spread. We know them. The assermanized dance, hygiene, wash your hands regularly with soap to kill the virus. We know that. That is about hygiene. 2, Don't avoid touching infected or avoid touching infected surfaces. We talk of the personal protective equipment use, putting on masks where necessary, social distancing, following guidelines. If you are told not to share a sharp object, please respect that. Even if someone is your best friend, you don't know the viral status of such a person. You may think your friend is fine when someone is infected with hepatitis. We know hepatitis B is also another viral infection. So you cannot forget about these ones. Following guidelines, social distancing, use of personal protective equipment such as masks, ensuring hygiene. We can talk of control of vectors such as mosquitoes. Please, these are some of the behavioral ways of avoiding these infections. So for vectors, we know that elephantiasis is caused by virus. It is spread by a mosquito. So when you actually kill those mosquitoes before they transmit this virus that causes elephantiasis, you will be controlling it. So next time they may bring about the behavioral ways, the general ways you can control the spread of such infections. This time they brought the medical method. I think we are clarifying that. So the next question, they are saying that explain the significance. We explain the significance. Remember, as we said in the question, it's already on our website, and our website is as simple as www.utonline.com. When you go there, the question is already there. You read and get it. The last question is saying that we give the significance of controlling or preventing spread of such infections in a community. When you control the spread, like, do you know how much money the government used in controlling just Ebola? Let's leave alone COVID-19. Do you know how much or how many doctors that the government required to just control the spread of Ebola? Did you know that many people died because they are vulnerable? They have very weak immunity towards these viral infections. Did you know that very many people are living with several how can I tell you? Do you know that very many people survive with several abnormalities, body abnormalities because of viral infections? They have traumas with them. They know they are surviving with HIV/AIDS, so they have trauma. They're even prone to suicide. So prevention of spread of such infection is of very, very vital importance. great importance when we control the spread. And among all, the advantages or significance of control of spread of viral infections. They include protection um, of people with weak immunity and other vulnerable people. For example, the younger ones, the babies, do they know that they should put on masks? These kids, 2 years old, 1 year old, will just move around to go and play with the other. However, if someone is infected with any viral infection, don't you see that this kid is vulnerable, is more likely to be infected because he does not know? But when we avoid such infections to be in a community, you know that we are protecting these kinds of people. We have some people with very weak immunity, with very weak immunity. To reduce costs of living. Did you know that we spend a lot of money when you have a viral infection? They will tell you to always visit a hospital, and it is not free of charge. They may be giving you the treatment free of charge, or the supportive treatment free of charge, but the transport you use on a daily basis. Three, reduce on abnormalities such as stress, depression, anxiety that come as a result of being infected. We hear of stigma, that people with AIDS, other people fear to stay with them. The stigma they talk about, that leave the infected person traumatized, depressed, anxious. So when we control the spread, we shall reduce on the number of people with such abnormalities in our communities. To mention but a few, I think we can build on these ones, but they are very many. We cannot finish them. Please, if you have any more significance, put it in the comment section for your other friends to see it. Don't forget to comment, to post, like, and invite more of your friends to join us for this. We are online. We have more coming. Tisha Alan, I sign out.